Okay, James, it's on you, my friend. James?
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Portsmouth Coffee Talks evening edition. We're here on this Thursday night, and we welcome you all here. And I'm here along with my co-host, Leah Drake-Stitt and Thomas the Colonel Chapman. Haven't seen you guys since Monday morning.
Oh, yes, it has been. It seems like it's been a million years.
Yeah, how time? It's not a lot of time in between that. But,
no, it's not. That's for sure.
In here, but today we have a special return guest, and her name is Attorney Alana Glover.
Very good, James. I'm proud of you, James. Yay!
And she's returning back with us, and we're going to talk a little bit about Supreme Court decisions that's been made recently. But before we get into that, Alana, since you've been here last, what's been going on with you?
You know, a lot of things have been going on with me, just moving forward as far as, still handling my cases. As you stated before, I'm a commercial attorney. So I'm in the courtroom every day. I'm still involved with the mayor's office, with the community grants reviewer's office here in Baltimore City, where we review community grants to offer to different nonprofits that service the community, and just pushing along, being an attorney, and especially I think amongst everything that's happening just in society and, just doing your day-to-day attorney responsibilities can be a lot at times. So I've been doing that, and also, still volunteering. I volunteer with the Pro Bono Resource Center. So sometimes I represent people in rent court who are at risk for eviction and things like that. So I'm steadily moving day by day, just taking it as it comes.
And you failed to say that you recently passed the Virginia bar.
Oh, yeah. I did recently pass the Virginia bar. I took it in February. We got the results, I think, in end of April. We got the results. So I got sworn into actually this month in June. I raised my right hand, to honor the Virginia statute, the Virginia law. So that was exciting. And now I am a practitioner in Virginia with DC pending. Hopefully that will be in the next couple of months, and I'll officially be a DMV attorney. And after that, no more.
Congratulations.
After that.
Congratulations.
Awesome. Let me ask you this. Okay, you're in the corporate law firm. So if you came down, if I wanted you to come to Virginia to represent me, would you be able to do that? I mean, what area of law would you practice here in Virginia, or would it have to be specified?
So it's not specified. When you're barred in the state of Virginia or any state, you can practice, any area of law. It depends on what type of cases you want to take. I will say so generally they have plaintiff's attorneys and they have defense attorneys. So I'm more on the defense side and the corporate side and the business side. So I represent businesses in a lot of matters. And also mostly what I do too, in addition to just general liability, is labor and employment. So a lot of businesses have been reaching out to me just to ask about, the laws, what are the laws in the state, kind of how that applies to their particular business. And if there is an issue regarding an employee or things like that, I can advise them on that. I've also advised some people in Virginia and Maryland on non-compete agreements. So if you're in a position and you want to do, another position and you want to weigh your options and consider that, that's a lot of the work that I do. But like I said, right now, I'm still a new lawyer. I've been a year and some change now, and now maybe a couple months in Virginia. So I'm still doing a lot of different areas in the law. In law school, of course, I did criminal in the Innocence Project Clinic. So I do have that experience as well. And I usually, if anyone's interested, just for general legal advice, they just reach out to me and I'll help them in that way. If I can't help them personally, I have a network, of attorneys in Virginia and Maryland that I can refer them to.
Okay, well, I have you on speed dial. Let's get into the subject. And Colonel, do you want to start us off with that discussion about the Supreme Court decision?
Well, let me get this off, is that first, the views listened or stated on this program are the host and the guest and no one else. and so they keep us out of Facebook jail. And then so since we have our attorney here, or an attorney, so you know when to tell us to give us a signal or something.
I'll give the signal.
So this what I will call, in my opinion, this rogue Supreme Court that just for the first time in say 50 years plus has taken away the rights of a woman across, well, in a large section of our country, to make decisions for her own body. And what it has done, in my opinion, is open a schism into our country that has separated it, as if this was the North and South in the Confederacy. And the Confederacy is represented by the anti-abortion states. And so women now who are in what I call the Confederate States, or the anti-abortion states, can, if they need those abortion services, they have to go to a free state, just like you have to find a Harriet Tubman or somebody out there and go to the underground to do that. And so can you talk about the what was the case that overturned it? And I think it started off in Mississippi.
Yes, it originally started off in Mississippi. It was the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization case. But it ultimately overturned the case of Roe v. Wade and also Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which were two predominant cases which really established not necessarily the right to an abortion, but the right to privacy. The focus of both of those cases was focusing on, under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, that women have a right to privacy and autonomy over their own bodies. This case basically overruled those decisions and basically established, similar to what you said, Colonel, that now it is, it's not a right to privacy. Essentially, they said it's not, there's no right to abortion in the Constitution, is what the Supreme Court justices ultimately reasoned. And this was 6-3. So, I mean, as most of you all know, during the prior administration, I believe there may have been 3 to 4 justices that he put in. One, Obama had initially tried to put in a justice, which they stopped. And Trump was able to put in another justice. So now on the conservative side, they have a super majority. And, for moving forward, that super majority is probably going to be ruling similarly for cases going forward. So basically that's what they did. They took away the federally protected right of abortion, which, like you said, Colonel, leaves it up to the states. States are widely, varied. So a lot of the states, like you stated, in the deep South, such as Alabama, Kentucky, have banned abortion outright, where you have states such as Maryland and other states in the North who have said, our governor has issued a statement and said he intends to protect the right established previously based on the law, and he is not going to support any state institutions banning that right. So essentially what they did, in short, was they really took that federal protection for women across this nation, and they left it in the hands of the states to really do unregulated regulations on different abortion services for women throughout the country.
Yeah. You mentioned your governor, that's Governor Hogan. So for those who are listening, when you said our, I just want to, it was Governor Hogan. Now, the Confederate Governor Youngkin down here in Virginia has already said he's kicking it to the legislature, who is owned by, in House of Representatives, owned by the Confederates. And we only have 1 vote margin in the Senate. And that's why we have to get out and vote in this next election, so they don't have all 3 branches or offices, and then in the state offices, and then it will be illegal then, because it won't take till 1 o'clock the next day after the election, or when they're all sworn in, for them to overturn that in the state of Virginia, and then we will become a Confederate state. So I
Yeah.
just need to make that distinction.
Okay, Colonel, but what bothered me was one of the opinions, and it may have been that Thomas's man's opinion, who said that unless it is deeply rooted in American history, then those are issues that should not be dealt with by the Supreme Court. And if we think about the 14th Amendment, we think about being deeply rooted in the American history, and the Constitution, which was written in 1776, women had no rights. African Americans had no rights at all. They were only seen as a third of a man. So if it's not written there, then he felt the Supreme Court had no rights to do it. So they kick it down they kick it out of the Supreme Court down to the state legislation. Okay, when they kick it down to the state legislation, you think of what Tim Kaine said. Tim Kaine said the wildly out of touch Supreme Court has ruled out that reproductive decisions aren't worthy of constitutional protection, but must be matters for legislative actions, which means, once again, if you don't get out here and vote for those individuals who's going to represent you in your state legislation, you are prone to have all kinds of decisions. The decisions this court is making, the lower courts, we have no place with the lower courts because Trump appointed most of those lower court judges.
Yeah.
So we're lost.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Colonel.
Well, the thing is, and you mentioned that the right to privacy, and you mentioned Uncle Clarence. And Uncle Clarence has also stated that he wants to look at some other precedences or freedoms that we also enjoy. And I'll tell the folks out here, and I'm gonna let our guest attorney tell us about Griswold versus Connecticut. And when they overturn that nationwide, what does that mean for women of America?
Yeah, well, the Griswold case, I believe that's the case regarding contraception. So that's going to be also a very big hit to women in America. Like you said, this is the one case in the past 50 years, typically, and I'm not sure if you all were able to read the opinion. I know it was a long opinion.
It was a long opinion.
It was a long opinion, but in the law, we rely on the principle stare decisis, which is basically you are supposed to rule based on prior precedent. This law of contraceptions, the right of privacy had been litigated and decided. And most of these judges who voted alongside of this opinion, when they participated in their Senate hearings and they were asked this particular case, said that they would follow the rule of law, which they didn't do. So back to your question, Colonel, based off of what they've done here and other rulings, like the gun ruling case they just recently ruled upon, and we can talk later because there's affirmative action case down the pipeline very soon, which I'm pretty sure we know how they're going to rule on that as well. It's really taken away individuals' rights, and for women, that will make it more difficult for women to regulate their own bodies with contraception, such as birth control, things that really should be a woman's personal decision. And that's what was established in Griswold. In Roe v. Wade was supposed to establish when it came to abortion access. And like I said, abortion access is not just the theory of, just the woman has to have an abortion. It's a medical issue that women have to decide. You don't know what situation a woman could be in that she has to make that decision. And now the federal government, well, not the federal government, but the Supreme Court has decided you're not protected. We're not going to protect you anymore. And now they're at the will of the state. And I just want to say this point, and I'm going to hand it back over. But what you and Ms. Leah were both saying, it is so important now more than ever to vote in your state elections. I think for people, of all ages, of all backgrounds, they are going to be the ones making the decisions regarding your healthcare rights, regarding probably very soon regarding your right to contraception, and when you have the ability to create life and to create a family. And that should be an individual right. That's what Griswold said. That is a private right between, two individuals when they decide that, and they should be able to have access to contraception without that being regulated with the state. And there were so usually there are certain provisions such as strict scrutiny, which is a standard that courts review certain government restrictions. So strict scrutiny is the highest standard. And that's the standard that most of these provisions were regulated under. And now it's basically saying it's going to be a free for all. You know, I think that's honestly what's going to happen with this case. And I'm hoping they don't go back and address the cases, like you said, Griswold and the other ones. But I think the way we've seen this court,
where they headed,
I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's next on the chopping block.
And Alana, and the women need to know, James, I'm going to make this one statement. I'm going to get right back to you, James. The women need to know, I think it's one, I can't think of who it is, but it's in Missouri, where they're checking women's menstrual cycles. They're checking when women buy menstrual items. They're checking if a lady has a miscarriage, she may have to go to court to determine whether if it happened through nature or if something that happened, her taking a pill. You can't get the morning after pills. I mean, they're really, and the amazing thing to get me, Alana, is that you get 2 men who were charged with sexual assault of women who are part of the majority who came down with this case.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you know what?
And I have to ask this, Carol, let me get in. I have to ask this, you know, with these cases, and you just said the way it's going, a lot of different cases might be addressed. And what they have done so far, you know, leading up to this, there's been a lot of political talking about this. How are we looking at our Supreme Court now, looking at the more political side as opposed to dealing with the interpretation of the law?
Well, you know, I think that we are based off of, well, I think politics is coming more involved in it, but I don't think, you know, society opinion is not wrong. You know, the judges are supposed to interpret the law, but also Justice Thurgood Marshall, who was on the court, he interpreted the Constitution as a living document. So how, you know, Ms. Leah discussed as well, they're saying, well, in, you know, 18, you know, they said this, that's not realistic.
Exactly.
You know, you are still relying on a document, like Ms. Leah also said, that women did not contribute to, Black Americans did not contribute to. Now we have different groups in this country. We have, you know, Asian Americans in this country. We have Hispanic Americans. None of those people were at the table when that document was ultimately created. And Thurgood Marshall's theory was, even though we use those words, you have to be able to interpret the law consistent to society of today. And this is the same justice that, you know, when he was attorney, he argued and won Brown versus Board of Education, which ultimately overruled Plessy v. Ferguson, which was separate but equal. You know, argued that case saying that even though justices said separate but equal was acceptable under Constitution, you know, interpreting the Constitution today, that was inherently unequal. So I think, you know, there is a lot of politicism in it. I think that the politicism should be taken out of the appointment process.
Exactly.
You know, especially in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest court of the land, highest court of federal courts, and it also, I mean, governs state courts in most cases. And, you know, like we said, we have a super majority, and there's no way, how are they even gonna work around that when most of our opinions, like I said, there is an affirmative action case pending now that they've already heard that's coming. And based off of how they've already been ruling, we're going to continuously get opinions that are 6-3 that are not considering, you know, the rule of the law and different opinions. They're just considering their maybe more conservative, reserved ideologies of the party that nominated them, which is just problematic because, you know, there's a lot of individuals in this country that the Supreme Court no longer represents. So that's very problematic, in my opinion.
And, you know, and getting back to what I said, kind of, I'm gonna let you go. In some states, women can face up to 10 years in prison if they have a miscarriage that they determined was not by nature's cause. 10 years in prison.
Yeah.
You know, and so your body is, but yet they don't scrutinize men. Are there any laws to say these men who are impregnating these ladies should have some place in all of this?
Yeah, and just a response to you, Ms. Leah, and then I'm gonna let Colonel speak, but I agree with you, and someone said it as well, as that from this opinion and this, you know, them not providing that federal protection, is almost as females and women, you know, people who can bear children are being put into second-class citizenship.
Exactly, exactly.
You know, like that's a healthcare decision, and the government, and that's what Roe v. Wade had really decided. It wasn't, a lot of people say Roe v. Wade was, you know, an abortion.
It was not.
What it was a right to privacy that said a woman has the right to privacy to decide what she needs to do with her healthcare needs and her body. So that's just, I just wanted to reply to you, but
I thank you so very much.
I'll let the Colonel jump in.
Well, yes, and I think that you know, the Confederates or the Republican Party has followed the same mantra, saying we want to go back, everything to go back to states' rights. And we know what states' rights mean, and they want to take us back to the 50s, where there was, everything was separate but equal, but it was separate but unequal.
Mm-hmm.
I know you were talking about the affirmative action case, and that was the Harvard affirmative action, and coupled with the University of North Carolina
Yes.
case that is pending, and it's going to be done, and it's basic. They are going to wipe out affirmative action. And then but with that, they think they are going to hurt, and affirmative action only applies to Black and brown people.
Mm-hmm.
But there are more white women that get these government contracts under the affirmative action. And when they throw that out, they are going to they are going to wake up and says, what happened now? And then so I had to make that point there.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. A lot of these decisions, I mean, even this decision, I mean, it affects all women, you know, of course. It affects women of different backgrounds, but like you said, in the affirmative action case as well, it probably is going to affect mostly women. It most likely probably will affect white women, because they just have more, you know, resources to be able to take advantage of some of these things. But I think these justices are just very, like I said, they are originalist thinking. They said they want to go back to what the original intent of the Constitution are, and they are not looking at the document as Justice Thurgood Marshall did, and probably Justice Jackson will, when she was just sworn in today, and she will be on the court sooner rather than later. You know, look at the document as it's a document you are supposed to interpret with today, where at today where women have rights, where you know, Black and brown communities and all different communities have been discriminated against, and they have certain policies to correct those discriminatory practices. They don't recognize those things. And what's the sad part is, as I discussed, is the justice appointments are lifetime appointments.
Yes.
Decisions are going to affect us for generations, I'm probably going to have grandkids that are still going to be feeling the effects of this decision. And that's why both Colonel and Ms. Leo, when you were talking about voting is important. And I try to tell my peers, you know, the 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, everybody, voting is important in midterm elections, you know, at the state level, at the local level, because when our former president got in this position, that's one thing that he did. He ensured, and that's something that's going to devastate the country for, you know, to come. He ensured that he got who he wanted on that Supreme Court.
He surely did.
And like it's very
unqualified people, Alana, people would never tried a case before.
Yeah, and it's very hard, if not, it can be done, but it is very difficult to remove a Supreme Court justice. I mean, it can be done, but that's very unlikely for them to happen. So we can't vote out a Supreme Court justice. You know, we can't, once a Supreme Court justice is appointed, they have until their lifetime. And then when we get someone in office, we have to, you know, press them to appoint people that are going to apply the rule of law, and that they're going to do it in a way that recognizes the realities of society today.
James?
Well,
No, go ahead, Colonel.
well,
I'm
you
going to.
alluded to the judges. Mr. Trump, the traitor Trump, appointed almost 280 non-qualified. Of 280, maybe 270 of them did not meet the ABA standards to hold a judgeship, and they are ultra conservative, and so most of them are young, and so they will outlive us.
That's right.
And so they will continue to do damage in this country, because the Confederates normally shop those judges to bring it up and to get things before the Supreme Court. And you'll never, I think there was only one I'd have to go back and look at history. You might be able to tell me the one Supreme Court justice that was impeached.
Yeah.
In this country.
I believe that it may have been one, but
I think it's one, but
yeah,
it's impossible.
Yeah, it's very difficult to be done.
Yeah. So with Uncle Clarence being in the 70s and Alito being the next oldest, or he's up there right behind there, you have a better chance for them to have a natural not wake up in the morning, and that's the only way it's going to happen to change that. So not wishing that on them, but I'm just saying. So we just have to wait till they pass on, and then we get two more if we have a Democratic president, and we have the Senate. And that's why it's important to have the Senate, because Mitch McConnell, Dr. Death himself, who's walking dead, looks like he's dead already, has already said he is not going to let any justices come before the Supreme Court when they take over the Senate. And so that's why it's very important. And he's also said that any judges that come through, they have to be moderate. But you don't say that when Trader Trump was out there and putting these right-wing judges out there. So there's a different standard, and Democrats will have to wake up one day and learn how to fight and stop turning the other cheek. And so now that we talked about the contraception piece, and then I think Uncle Clarence also talked about the Lawrence. He wants to revisit Lawrence versus B. Texas.
Lawrence B. Texas. I think he also said Obergefell. Did he say Obergefell?
Obergefell too.
Obergefell, yes.
Okay, yes, because I know Obergefell, and I believe Lawrence B. Texas. I may have to check my con law review on this, but I believe those are the same sex cases. I know.
Yes, it is.
That's it.
Yeah. So yes,
all the privacy stuff is all connected there.
Exactly, and he did write the concurring opinion. So that was in the concurring as opposed to the majority opinion. So, so you know, the listeners know, and usually when an appellate court issues an opinion, they'll have the majority opinion, which the majority of the justices sign off on, and that is the law of, you know, the land in this case, or that may be a law of the state if it is a state court. But then justices sometimes write concurring opinions, or they write dissents. So in this case, we had the three justices write a dissent, and then we had Justice Kavanaugh and we had Justice Thomas write concurring opinions. And he basically alluded to that's what needs to be.
Oh yeah.
Next. He said if we're going through and we're looking at right to privacy, I think we also need to look at the right to same-sex marriage. And like we discussed, that's an issue because it was under the right to privacy. People have a right to make private decisions, you know, who they want to marry, who they want to be in union in. And, you know, I hate to use the word slippery slope, but we do. We already have gone down the slope, but it's just leading to so many precedents being. And as I explained to you all earlier, and this opinion discusses like in depth, is the principle of stare, you know, decisis. So you're technically supposed to follow precedent.
Yes.
Particularly because the Supreme Court has ruled these decisions, lower courts are required to follow them. You know, even at the state level, they can't violate constitutional law that the U.S. Supreme Court. They can keep challenging it, but it will be years. Like I said, it'll be generations. Just like how it was 50 years. Case, it probably will be another 50 years if they ever, you know, revisit this and readdress these issues. And that's just taking the rights away of so many Americans, you know, and individuals throughout this country, you know. And I think it's just not, we already ruled on this. They're supposed to follow the precedent set in. And like I said, multiple justices during their Senate confirmation hearing said that they
were going to touch it.
Law. That's what the role of the justice is supposed to be. Interpretation of the law. Like we said, we have three different branches of government. You have your judicial branch, which interprets the law. you have your executive branch, which enforces the laws, and then you have your legislature, which makes the laws. This Supreme Court is essentially remaking law. And it's disheartening because it's so little we can do, but to tell people to make sure you vote for your state elected officials, make sure you stay diligent over time in the federal elections. And we just have to hope that we can do things to combat, these legal decisions that are coming down, because like I said, justices are not voted into office. We can't vote them in, but we can look at who we elect federally. And there has been some discussion about expanding the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, Colonel. I don't know if that's going to happen. At some point in the 1800s as well, it was more than 9 justices, but it's been 9 justices ever since. People have been discussing it, but I don't know, Colonel. I'm with you. That's going to ever become a reality.
Alana, James.
What difference would that make if you still have the same people putting the justices in? Even if you had 45 justices in there, you're still going to have the same unbalance. But I want to go to this just for a minute. We can still go back to the other issues. Help me understand the decision they made on the Miranda rights. Is that something that's going to, because we get a lot of people of a certain color that are arrested often, is that something that's going to hurt that situation, or is it something that's going to help down the road? Help me understand why they even address that.
Yes, well, like I said,
you might not know why they addressed it, but help me understand.
I think both the Colonel and Ms. Leo talked on, this is all being done intentionally.
Right.
A lot of this is just like during the civil rights movement, there was impact litigation. So certain groups will bring certain cases when they feel, they can win those cases to try to either strengthen a law or either weaken a law. So during the civil rights movement, we saw a lot of civil rights cases being intentionally brought before the Supreme Court that were intended to strengthen our civil rights. In the adverse, what we're now seeing is a lot of groups bringing cases such as we have the Affirmative Action case, we have this case, we have the gun case, and we have the that we're about to talk about, the Miranda case, which were intentionally brought and litigated, to try to lessen and weaken those rights. So in summary, it's not going to strengthen the protections of criminal defendants. Short version of this case. So typically, you have a right to have your Miranda rights read to you when you are arrested and you are considered detained. If your Miranda rights are violated, then that ultimately, in layman terms, that will taint the arrest, and that can taint the ultimate investigation, which is important to have those rights, because just like you stated, most of the Miranda issues derive out of Black and Brown communities. Like the reality is most of these cases, whether it be the Dobbs case, the Affirmative Action, they're going to mostly adversely affect Black and Brown communities. So essentially what that case does is it weakens the strength of that Miranda right claim. So now if you get arrested and someone violates your Miranda rights, and also what it really is supposed to protect against is self-incrimination. So, a lot of times people get arrested who have just dealt with the criminal justice system for the first time. And they've made false confessions. That has happened. That is a very true reality. And the point of Miranda is you're supposed to read an individual their Miranda rights, which is basically to say, anything you say can be used against you in a court of short version. That's supposed to inform someone of their rights before, and the officer is supposed to do that once they are in custody, before they make any statements that could be considered self-incriminating. And typically if an officer did not give those rights properly, they can't use those statements. So if it's a statement and they didn't read you your Miranda rights, they can't then take that statement and use it in court. And that can be very problematic because we saw those issues which came nationally, the Central Park 5, when the whole movie came and a lot of people heard about it. But like I said, it is and I think more often than not, because we also experienced it a lot in the Innocence Project Clinic, people make false confessions. Like that happens a lot. Juveniles can make false confessions. A lot of times somebody who's never dealt with the criminal justice system or police, they can get, you know, scared, and they might just make a confession, because police have the right. It is illegal, not illegal, but it's legal for police to, you know, basically not tell the truth, which is fine. You know, that's how they do their investigation. But they can say, a police officer can say, I have this evidence, I have this evidence, I have this evidence, because that's how they, you know, conduct their investigation. But for a minor, or for someone who's never dealt with the criminal justice system, they might feel like, well, if I just confess, I take a 5-year plea deal, I make this statement, to do that than to go to court because they said that I have this and this, and they don't know their rights. You know, they don't know. And when I was in the Innocence Project clinic, and anything I tell anybody is a general rule of law, you have a right to remain silent. Like, exercise your right and talk to an attorney, a public defender, anybody before you make any statements, because you might, you know, if you've never been in a position like that, you could end up, you know, self-incriminating yourself. Ultimately, that case really just weakened the protections of Miranda, which is supposed to protect individuals from those self-incriminating statements.
And
But
people
getting
wonder
back- go ahead.
why innocent people run when
Yeah.
doing something. And you know, we see that happening a lot. And they say, well, why would they run? Why would someone innocent run? You know, because of situations like that. Now they might even run even more now because even that right might be taken away.
Yeah. But Alana, getting back to this Roe versus Wade stuff, you know, it's amazing that gun rights, the Second Amendment, doesn't fall into state rights, but a woman's body falls into state rights. And and I think back to what Amy Barrett says. She says that children can be adopted. Okay. They had a legislator, I think he was from Alabama, either Alabama or Mississippi, who recently said that if a 12-year-old girl was a victim of an incest, he has to carry that baby to term. Now, Amy Coney Barrett says that, oh, well, the child can be adopted. There are 120,000 children eligible for adoption in America, with over 400,000 children in the foster care system. So where's the money for paid maternity leave? Where's the money for food? Where's the money for housing? It's easy to say that because she adopted one Black child, so therefore everybody else is going to go out here. It's not going to happen. So you're going to have a flood in the adoption system. You're going to have a flood in the foster care system, and they believe in rights before birth. But after birth, they do nothing to take care of these children who are born. Your thoughts, my dear?
Yeah, well, interestingly, you say that. I know they were just reporting because they've kept an update, you know, status of states who have already, you know, outlawed abortion, you know, straight out. There's no abortions allowed in those states. Like I said, I believe Alabama is one. Kentucky maybe one. Other states. But like, it's interesting because someone pointed this out as well, is those same states are the one that provide the least healthcare services, educational services, social services. And I just think, you know, sometimes, or the people who made this decision weren't considering those type of things. You know, they just considered their ideology regarding, you know, abortion. Really, that's what it came down to. And like I said, in a woman's right to make that decision is a personal decision. It's a medical decision. And all of the points you pointed out, Ms. Leah, are completely valid and accurate. And another point that a lot of women have been pointing out is a lot of time abortion services are needed just in healthcare procedures. Have, you know, ectopic pregnancies, or people that have miscarriage, they can have incomplete miscarriages. And what happens to that is basically similar to an abortion procedure. And just when this decision, you know, was made, that wasn't considered. And it's, you know, she was the only woman, the justice, as you just mentioned, who, you know, signed on to that opinion. And it's, I guess it seems like they have valued those lives almost more than the mother's, you know, more than the woman's life. And it's
she came from the Federalist Society, so we'd expected no less from her, believe me. We expected no less, believe me.
Yeah, you would expect no, but you would hope that, you know, a woman, and as we talked about society and how you should interpret society,
exactly,
of the law, that you would consider, why the prior law was like that and the aftermath. Like I said, I think for generations to come, we're going to see this play out. And it probably will cause a lot of obstacles, mostly for women, individuals who can have children, and how can a majority male Supreme Court this that basically regulates the bodies of women, allows the states to regulate the bodies of women, when that should be a federally protected right, just as we have other federally protected.
It tickles me because it takes me back to what I think her name was Collis Chapman, a law professor. I forgot what she's a law professor at, but she said the real question is, if a fetus is a person at 6 weeks pregnant, is that when child support starts? Is that also when you can't deport one mother because she's carrying a US citizen? Or can I insure a 6-week fetus and collect if I miscarry?
Yeah.
So many issues.
But see, what I think was interesting about this opinion, and they tried to stay away from, they tried to write the opinion focusing on that the Constitution doesn't give a right to abortion, stayed away from establishing specifically, at what point does it constitute a life?
Exactly.
It was done purposefully for the same things you just discussed, because then it gets into, okay, well, what point for other purposes, for family law, for child support,
exactly,
things do you render that a life? So I think they purposely stayed away from that for those exact reasons. But we'll see, because a case may be brought up in the future and they may have to address that. And I'm concerned and going to be on the lookout for what they decide on that question.
But with the group that we have there, I don't think the outcome is going to be very good. That's for sure. Go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
They're going to leave that to unmedically educated politicians. It's just crazy. Colonel, I'm sorry.
Well, you know what, you mentioned Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana,
Missouri. Don't leave Missouri out, please.
But especially those Southern Confederate states have for decades have led the nation in poverty and unemployment, high maternal death rates. And everything bad, they always lead in that. And then so, but the people down there keep putting the same people back in office that are just they vote against their self-interest. And there's got to be there's something wrong with our society when we keep doing that. And I think that I look at, I'm a football fan. I look at the University of Mississippi and LSU and all that. The brothers down there that keep signing up, going out, come up north and let's boycott those money-making teams down there, because basically you're supporting slavery down there. And so I just had to get that off my chest with that. And Leah, you talked about, and you talking about politicians. There's a representative, Mary Miller, was
my goodness,
on the stage with the Confederate or Trader Trump, that says, "Mr. Trump, you saved white life."
Yes, she did. She said it.
She has said aloud what they want to get done. And there's a theory out there of not CRT, but replacement theory. And saying that, yes, we have too many Black and brown people out here, and we're going to be in the minority if they look at the statistics. And so if we, because 60% of the abortions are from white women.
That's right.
So if we stop the abortions, we'll have a chance to catch up. And for those politicians that keep voting for this, they're going to be able to get abortions for their side piece. They have the access to do that. And the doctors will still do it, even if they might be down in a Confederate state. They're going to make up a reason to get that abortion for their family members, because all of a sudden it's the life of the mother and they got to do it. But if you're Black and brown or whatever, or poor or underserved, you're going to have to die on the table. because as a clinician, nobody's going to put their livelihoods at risk when you got 10 years or lifetime or lose my practice to save you. And so it's going to, from a medical side standpoint, it has opened up a can of worms.
It has.
It has.
And the thing about it, for all of those folks out here saying, well, I'm not for abortions. It's not about abortions. Throw that to the back of your mind. It has nothing to do with, it's about women's rights.
Yes.
It's all about your rights as a woman that's being taken away from you. You don't care for abortions, that's fine. But you need to do something to make sure we put people in place who are going to maintain and secure your rights as a human being. That's what's important at this stage of the game.
I wanted to add to what you said, Colonel. I agree with you to that point. As like you said, taking away this federal protection, it really is an equity issue. It really is going to adversely affect the most underserved, the most vulnerable populations throughout our community, Black and brown communities, people of lower socioeconomic statuses, because the reality is a lot of these people who have those means, like you said, if they need those services, they're going to fly someone out to another state. They're going to call their family doctor. And medical services, which I'm sure you all are aware of, because, even before this job, I worked in the health department at the Attorney General's office, the Maryland Attorney General's office. But health services are very expensive.
Yes, they are.
And then we might there may be other issues with insurance now, which we may not even be thinking about, or they might not have thought as another cause, whether or not certain women's insurance is going to, cover that. Certain procedures I have not experienced it myself, but I know pregnancies cost thousands of dollars.
Yes, it does.
Have insurance and insurance covers it, but costs thousands of dollars. And I remember in the health unit, we would, negotiate with hospitals and we would talk about prescriptions. So I saw the original price before healthcare gets involved, and prescriptions can cost $700, $800. Services, people that have to go through procedures, chemo, those cost thousands of.
Oh, yes.
And now that's going to be another impact where, I'm not sure how insurance companies are going to respond. I'm not sure now if a woman does need that service, she has a complication in her pregnancy, she doesn't have access. An insurance company could say, well, federally, there's no right to that. So we don't have to cover those services anymore. So it really adversely affects the most vulnerable population.
And Leah, I'm glad you said, use that term, women's rights instead of abortion.
Right.
But, I'm going to use the Colonel's term, the Confederates are going to keep that term abortion out there because, that's like a word that once they hear that, they're not going to hear anything else.
Exactly.
They're just going to hear the abortion thing. But Alana, before we wind down, I wanted to get your take on the January 6th committee. And I know they are not a legal entity, but they are presenting some compelling evidence on things, activities that happen around that things that we actually saw in real time. And we just didn't get the backstory. We heard things, but they're presenting the evidence. I guess the DOJ is the only legal entity that can act on that. Am I right?
Yes, I believe so. That is the proper that would act on that. We do have a U.S. Attorney General, which the DOJ, operates under. So that, it would be a federal crime, and they would be the only party that would be able to act on it because of, his position and what occurred that time. A state court, or even federal district courts or federal circuit courts would not be able to preside over that. So the Department of Justice and probably the U.S. Attorney General's, the U.S. Attorney's Office would probably have to act on that.
Do you think with the compelling evidence, and they still might have some more that's coming up, that they might act on it? I don't think many people don't have any confidence that they will, because it's other things that we feel like they could have acted on with less evidence. But this is things they're throwing out there in the public light, even with the president, Teflon Don, need to take that coat off of him, and so we can get to him. But do you think it'll be something that they cannot avoid looking at all this evidence that's so publicly there?
And I have seen some of the evidence. I have saw some of the witness testimony. I know an employee that I believe was working there, and also I know his daughter testified, and other people testified as well. I mean, I believe that it is a good amount of evidence. I think, you know, I hope that they properly apply the law, and that law is enforced. And I do think that, you know, based off what they decide, there should be consequences for what took place. Am I confident? I don't know. You know, I don't know. I feel like with the federal government, even they try to stay away from a lot of those things, you know, like especially things like I feel like the evidence is there. Whether or not they will act on it is another thing. And then I think, as many of you all mentioned, even though as a rule of law, politics technically should not be involved in the rule of law, it is involved in the rule of law times. And I think in this particular situation, I think a lot of politics is going to be involved in it, where they don't want to, you know, totally convict, you know, him or Hope, because they don't want to rub certain people the wrong way. And I know even with talking about this issue and talking about, you know, their discussions around extending the Supreme Court, which we know is probably not going to happen. They talk about, you know, midterm elections are coming up, and we don't want, you know, to rock the boat. Certain, you know, congressional members and people like that. And even though it would be in the DOJ's hands, it's still under, you know, the office of the president that we have in now. And, you know, I think President Biden has been doing things, but I think he's been taking his time on a lot, on a lot of things. Yes. He's been, you know, taking it, you know, just considering things. So I don't know. I mean, I would hope if the evidence is there, they should apply the rule of law, and there should be consequences from that. But like I said, do I feel confident that anything will come from that? I'm just not quite sure at this time.
It's a lot of people to hold responsible, but you know, we hear a lot of talk about criminal or justice reform, and how can we ever get there if it doesn't start at the top and work its way down to the bottom? And you're right, the politics involved seems to be more powerful, not seems, is more powerful than some cases the rule of law. But in my opinion, and I don't feel confident either, but you know, I just wish that it would start up there at the top where it should. And you know, because people down below that going to jail every day for much less. This is a crime against the nation, not against the neighbor, you know, that you go to jail for or be fined for. It's a crime against the nation. And I guess a lot of people feel this way, but you're correct in your assumption, in your comments about, you know, it's very unlikely that something will happen because of the politics of it.
Yeah.
Well, one comment though, you talk about President Biden. Biden has left it up to the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, and Merrick Garland came from as an appellate judge. He is acting like he's a judge.
Appellate judge.
And so he is slow as molasses. And actually, I think he's gun shy because Mitch McConnell messed him up. His mind ain't never got right since. And so he's taking his time, and he's really scared to pull the trigger. And by time, if he does pull the trigger and indict Mr. Trump, we'll be in full-blown election time. And by the time you do delays in the court system, he'll be back in the Oval White House, and everything will be dropped. And so that's always that
scary thought.
but that's how things are.
I know, but it's just scary to even think it, you know.
But you mentioned January 6th, and those people that are committed crimes against the country, treason against the country. It is apparently clear that we have two justice systems.
Oh yeah.
How can, if I am, I could throw a fire extinguisher or beat up a cop, and I'm getting less than a month or 30 days or whatever. And if I go down to downtown Portsmouth and even put my do the Rudy Giuliani thing, pop a cop on the back, just patting him, I'm going down, I'm gonna do some hard state time for years. And so it just doesn't smell right.
Yeah, and I think, Colonel, I agree with you. I mean, I think that's what a lot of people who are actively involved in, the criminal justice system, that there needs to be a criminal justice reform. I think what needs to be done is we need to, sit down or as a group and decide what these reforms need to be and be adamant about it. Because like you said, and like I explained, I had experience in the criminal justice system at the state level and some at the federal. I interned for 2 federal district court judges here in Maryland. And then I also was a member of the Innocence Project clinic litigating case in the state of Maryland. And there's it's interesting, like you said, you can get for drug crimes and things like that. I've seen people get 20 years, 10 years for crimes like that. But then there's white collar crimes. Still can be, I mean, you're taking money, doing embezzlement. And they might get, 5 years, couple months. And it's very just clearly we know, what type of populations and what type of that those laws are adversely affecting. It's something that needs to be addressed. And I think it's something that I said, I think the best way is we have to come on some accord, one accord and say, this is what we want to address, come up with a plan and be intentional about, the legislatures we put in, the justices, even at the state level. We've talked about the federal level. I mean, we talked about some of the state legislatures, but your state judges. And I think, well, in Virginia, I know your legislature appoints, yes. In Maryland, they appoint them, but they also have to run an election in Maryland. In addition to being appointed, they have to run an election race. But it's very important to pay attention to that, and follow up with your legislatures and, express to them, these are the type of judges we're looking for, because judges, just like state's attorneys, like, I know Stephanie Morales in Portsmouth has talked about this. They have a lot of discretion. They're supposed to follow the rule of law, and that's what they should do. But everybody makes decisions based off of their lived experiences, of what they've experienced. And when you had a judge that's never come from a certain community, that's never dealt with certain things, they may be more quicker to render a 20-year, sentence for something compared to a 10-year sentence and vice versa. So it's very, like you said, it's not across the board. It's not really equitable. There's a lot of issues that I think eventually will have to be addressed.
Right. The last thing is, we talked about earlier about the Miranda rights. So for those people that get caught up in the law and you get stopped or you get arrested, I would say the easiest thing and the most smartest thing to say, name, like you're a prisoner of war, name, rank, social, and name, rank, and where's my lawyer? That is it. Name, rank, and where and I need my lawyer and I need a phone call.
Yes, and I will say be clear, because there's also case law that if you don't clearly assert your right for your attorney, if you just say, I need to speak to somebody, or you need to say, I want to.
Attorney.
Yes, a lawyer, attorney, whatever you need to say to expressly state that record, you need to do that. And like I said, I just advise, because I think, especially in our community or just in groups, they say, like Mr. Overton said, I believe, they'll ask, why are you running? Or, you don't have anything to hide. Why are you scared to talk to certain people? It's just for your own protection. I always inform people, like public defenders. I went to school with many people that went to the public defender office at the federal level, at the state level. Some of the best people in my class went to the public defender's office. They have a heavy caseload. Of course, they have a lot going on, but just because you have a public defender doesn't mean they cannot
exactly
the law and make sure your rights are protected as well. So when you get in there, the first thing you need to do is, like Colonel said, name, your address or number, and then you need to say, I would like to speak to my lawyer, because once you assert that right, you cannot be questioned anymore until you're able to speak to a lawyer you've hired or a public defender in criminal matters.
In spite of all the negativity that's going on at this time, I must say that I am delighted that Ketanji Brown Jackson became a Supreme Court justice on this day. She is now Justice Jackson. She's going into a crazy situation, but I know she can handle it well. So I just had to mention that. In spite of all the craziness, there was one good flower out of the bunch today. James?
Confederates
Well,
hate.
I was gonna say, I think public defenders get a bum rap in most
They
of the
do.
movies
They
we
do.
see. And if you watch those movies, none of them ever get really good credit for what they do, even with the heavy caseloads they have. I want to say, Alana, thank you again. You have really enhanced our program again with your knowledge, and especially as a grad of 2020 out of law school. Okay, and I think when you were in law school with the Innocent Project and the internships on the state and federal level, prepared you once you got that law license to hit the ground running.
Exactly.
Plus to us, and if anybody asks, well, why did you go to someone so young? Why didn't you go to older, more experienced,
More seasoned person.
more
huh?
seasoned lawyer? Well, we could do that as well, but I had confidence in what you would bring to the subject that we were dealing with today, and we wanted to get a young lawyer coming out, get their perspective of what was going on. We really appreciate you taking the time out and being with us today. And this definitely won't be your last time, because the way it's going, we're going to need you back here again to interpret some of the other laws. I mean, the other decisions that the Supreme Court is going to make that we mentioned tonight that's probably coming. So again, we appreciate it. And if the hosts have any closing remarks, and Alana, we'll let you have your closing remarks as well.
Yes, Alana. And I hope that those who are out there listening, Daphne Sorrell says that the justice who was impeached was Samuel Chase in 1804. But in light of all that you've given us on today, I hope that we were able to impress upon the citizens that the local election is crucial. These people make determination what's going to happen in your lives on a day-to-day basis. Your state elections are crucial. These are going to be the individuals who are going to make a determination. Those rights that the Supreme Court has taken away, they're going to be the ones going to make the determination whether you're going to get these rights or not. And your national elections are crucial as well. So the major thing is that you need to vote. If you don't want decisions like this coming down, you need to vote. Many of these justices we're going to see for the next 10 years at least, if not 20. Because they try to stay until death sometimes. So it's important that you get out there, you cast your vote, you let your voice be heard, and people be vigilant. Look at what's going on in your local with your local people. Look at every day. Stay vigilant to see what they're doing, what they're saying. Does it impact upon you? Look at your state legislation. What's happening with them? Who really represents you? It's important, people, that you get out here and you vote. Alana, I love you to life. You have been just such an inspiration. And with the three of us being seasoned, it was only right that we should have a young person to come on to share with us. And you're closer to having just studied about all of these things. So we thank you so very much. Your knowledge is just overwhelming. I tell you, I just love you to life, and thank you so very much for agreeing to come on to Portsmouth Coffee Talk. Colonel?
Yes. Leah and Slim has basically said, they have made reference to your youth. And so I will put a different spin, because I look at you, and because of your youth, but your maturity is beyond your age, and chronological age.
It is.
Your knowledge and dedication to the law is outstanding, and it's just phenomenal. And I look forward to seeing the future that you have, or is going to bring to the body of law, and to wherever you do, you're going to be success. And the last piece, now that I've given you this, and I have to get this one more piece off my chest.
Uh-oh.
Do you hear the silence there?
Yeah, I heard a cricket.
DeAndre, Chris Woodard, and Paul Battle.
Ooh.
You're waiting on the phone call to see. So you're the last of the three horsemen. Come on the show and explain yourself. Okay, that's all I got to say.
And Alana, let me say, your father and Denzel are watching. So they're making sure that take us the right place. So
Okay.
Colonel, I love you too, Colonel.
Mhm.
You,
I had to get it off my chest.
you extended the invitation, Colonel. The invitation has been extended.
Yes, and they know they out there, but I just don't like people that hide.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank you all for having me on. You know, of course, anytime you call, I'm gonna change my schedule around and switch some things around, make sure I'm on the call, and just keep doing, you know, what you all are doing. I think it's so important to have different opinions and to address different type of issues. And that's what I really enjoy and respect about the show, is that, you know, you all are willing to sit down and talk to anybody and have a conversation. And I think that's what really, you know, is important, because I think, you know, even if you disagree with someone, I think it's still important to have the conversation,
Exactly.
to ask questions that need to be asked. So that's my final leaving piece.
Yes.
Thank you so very much, Alana. Thank you.
Yes.
Brother James.
And we thank the watchers and the people that were making comments, especially Ira Dodden. He made the most comments about the subject we were talking about today. And Alana, if you get the opportunity to go to Leah's page, and you can look at the comments that were made from the people that were watching tonight. And again, we appreciate you, and we want to thank everybody. And Portsmouth Coffee Talk is here for our voice,
Our community.
And our future.
Alana,
okay.
we have to send you a cup, girl.
Yeah.
You can hold your cup up. Since you're a regular, you need to hold your cup up as well.
Okay.
You know what she held up last time.
Oh yeah, I have my Delta cup.
Her Delta cup.
Yeah.
Should have poured
Yes.
it
I
out.
think keep raising that one, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. But thanks again, and you have a nice evening. And co-host, have a nice evening. We'll see
Same to
you.
you, James. Same to you, Alana and
See
Colonel.
you next time.
Yes.
And to those listening, thank you for watching.